Hey guys, welcome back to Tutoring.sa. My name is Solomon and we're going to be doing grade 8 work. We're going to be doing the CRJ and the CPJ. So to start, let's look at some theory. We're going to look at the cash receipts journal. This is what your cash receipts journal is. Now, receipts means that it's money coming into the business. So any money that comes into the business, we would place in our cash receipts journal. So it would be capital, income, services rendered, sales, and loan. The loan goes into a cash receipts journal because when we apply for the loan, the money then gets transferred into the organization's bank account and the money gets placed inside our bank. Right, so the cash receipts journal. It's important to always remember that you need to put the date and name of the business. You will lose out on marks if you don't place this here. So it's just easy marks to always remember. Next, the document number refers to the receipt number. So whenever money comes into the business, we issue a receipt. The receipt shows the person who's paying us that we have received this money. Now, the receipt goes into the document number, and it's very important to note that your receipts need to go in order. So if your first receipt is 1, your second one has to be 2. It cannot be 3, 4, 5, whatever, etc. Next, we go on to the day. It's important to put the date the transaction took place. Next, we look at the analysis of receipts column. So the analysis of receipts column basically represents our cash register at the business. So when someone buys something from our business, when you buy from a shop, they put the money into the cash register. Now, why they put it into the cash register? Because it would be silly and expensive for an employee to run every time that someone paid to the bank to deposit that money. So instead of putting it in the bank straight away, we put it in the analysis of receipts column. Then at the end of the day, we transfer that money to the bank. And how we show we're transferring it and that it's the end is we underline the transaction, and once it's underlined, it gets put into the bank account. Right. Next, we look at the sundry accounts and the extra columns as represented by the red. So what happens is your teacher will basically tell you what those columns represent. They could, for example, represent sales or services rendered or current income. When we have a transaction that relates to those items, such as current income, you will fill it in one of those columns. However, if you have a transaction that doesn't relate or fall within one of the columns that your teacher has given you, you would put that value into the sundry accounts. Now, the detail in the sundry accounts doesn't refer to the name of the recipient. The name of the recipient goes in the details. So let's say the owner of the business's name is James. James will be in the details, but in the original details. But in the sundry accounts details, it will say capital because he's putting capital into the business. Lastly, the FOL means the folio number, and what happens is when we're transferring these amounts to our general ledger, we have to put the according folio number as a reference to see which ledger each of the items go to. Next, we will look at the cash payments journal. This is a record of any money leaving the business. So when we pay money or we give money to anyone, we have to record it in the cash payments journal. So it's things such as drawings, any expenses, purchases, or loan repayments. So when we're paying back those loans, we have to take the money out of the business to pay back the loan. Now, it's important to remember that once again, we have to put the date and name of the business. So cash payments journal of so-and-so business for the month of July, for example. Then the document number, this now refers to the check number. It's important once again to remember that they must follow in numerical order. Day, you need to put your date in. Next, the name of the payee. So this is the name of the person who you're paying. It could also say details there. Then we have the sundry accounts. It works exactly the same as the cash receipts journal. So if your item falls within those columns, you place it there. Otherwise, it goes into your sundry accounts. Next, important would be the name of the account, not the recipient, the same as the cash receipts journal. So if the owner took money and his name was James, James would go in the name of the payee, and the details would be drawing. Then folio, again, we fill in the ledger reference when posting to the ledger. And it's also important to remember, look at those purple dots. We also need to put the reference under those columns. So let's say that that one column was for wages. Once we post the wages to the general ledger, we need to put that folio reference under the wages column. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to work through a working example. Okay, so we're going to be working through a working example, and I'm going to explain how we would deal with each of the following transactions in the different journals, just to get an idea of how we deal with the different transactions. So let's just read the question quickly. It says, Mr. B is the owner of a local repair shop, Repair Buddy. The business started operating on the 1st of April 2017. Repair Buddy repairs all machines. Prepare the CRJ and the CPJ for the business for November 2017. So we've got a list of transactions, and what I always like to do is separate which transactions go in our CRJ and which transaction go in our CPJ right at the beginning, so that I can finish my CRJ and then I do my CPJ, and then I'm not jumping between the two. It's much easier for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through it. So Mr. B gave the business a personal check as his capital. Capital we know goes to CRJ. Received an amount of 3,000. Automatically we receive money, goes to the CRJ. Mr. B's personal computer broke, he paid. The second we see paying someone, we know it goes to the CPJ. Received rent from our tenant and a receipt was issued. If we're issuing a receipt, it means we know that we have received money, so it goes to the CRJ. Issuing a check automatically indicates to us that it is the CPJ. Paid the wages, CPJ. Owner cashed a cash check for personal use. This means that he's taking money from the business, so it's drawings, and therefore goes in the CPJ. And lastly, we paid E and W, so that goes in the CPJ. Okay, so now that we've separated the transactions, let's work with each journal. So working with the cash receipts journal, the first thing that we're going to look at is the first transaction, and it says Mr. B gave the business a personal check for 100,000 Rand as his capital contribution, and we issued a receipt 101. So automatically we want to fill in the information that is obvious to us. We know that the document number needs to be 101, and the date has been given to us as the 1st of the month, so we can go and fill that into our document number and our day. Next, it says details. The next item is details, and we know that Mr. B gave us the business a personal check. So the person who gave it to us is the details, and we're going to go and fill in Mr. B in details. Next, we look and we can see that the 100,000 Rand is for a capital contribution, and there is no column for capital. We have analysis of receipts, bank, and current income. Therefore, there's no capital column, and this amount needs to be put into the sundry account. So we fill it in under the amount of 100,000, and the detail is capital. Lastly, this is the only transaction for the day for the cash receipts journal, but we're not going to put the 100,000 Rand in the analysis of receipts, because the owner is not going to come and give the lady working at the cash register 100,000 Rand just to keep in there. He will deposit it straight into the bank account, and therefore we can put it straight in the bank. Okay, next transaction. The date is the 3rd, and we received an amount of 3,000 Rand for services rendered. Okay, so the first thing we're going to put in is services rendered is when we provide the service that the business is operating. So instead of putting a receipt number, we are going to put CRR, which means that the money was put into our cash register roll at the business. It is put into our cash register. Therefore, there's the money. We don't need to give a receipt. And the detail is services rendered. Why it's services rendered is we don't need to get the name of every single customer that buys something from our shop. When you go to the shops to buy groceries, you don't give your name to the cashier at the till. They just record it as a sale. So we would put services rendered, and the document number is CRR, showing us that the money is in our cash register roll. So knowing that that money is in our cash register, we can go and put it in the column of the analysis receipts. And what was that money for? It was for current income, because we are giving a service, so it's income coming in. Your services rendered, your account will always be current income. Please note that there are 2 transactions on the 3rd, and therefore I am not going to underline the analysis of receipts just yet and put it in the bank account, because I still have to account for the other transaction. So I'm going to go and I'm going to put, the next thing I need to do is receive 500 Rand from Lady M in respect of rent income. A receipt was issued. So we need to go and fill in that receipt. Okay. And it's important to note, like I said earlier, that your receipt numbers need to go in numerical order. We haven't been given the number of the receipt, but we know that the first receipt was 101, and therefore our second receipt needs to be 102. Okay, so they don't always have to give you the receipt number. They can just give you one of them right in the beginning of the question, and you need to ensure that it will flow. If all your document numbers flow in numerical order, your teacher will normally give you a mark. You will lose a mark if it doesn't. Okay, the day you don't have to fill in again, because we know it's still on the 3rd, so you can leave it out or you can fill it in depending on what you choose. The details, it says we receive from Lady M. So Lady M goes into our details. Then the money goes into, the money was for in respect of rent income. Now, once again, we don't have a column for rent income, so this money needs to go into our sundry accounts, okay, for 500 Rand, and the account is rent income. And check how I put it in the analysis of receipts column, because that money is coming into our into the business. Now we are finished for the 3rd. So what we can go and do is underline the analysis of receipts column, and the person working at the shop can now go deposit this full amount that is in the cash register roll to the bank. And there we have 3,500. So you would not go and put 3,000 in the bank and then 500 in the bank. That's a waste of energy and a waste, because every time you're putting it in, you're paying for the transaction. So you would rather put all the money in for one day at one time. The last transaction is we received a rent of 6,000 Rand from our tenant, Mrs. M, who rents out the storeroom. A receipt was issued. So automatically we know a receipt was issued. We need to go in numerical order, and our next receipt number is 103, and the date is the 7th. Okay, the details, we were told that it is Mrs. M, and because they're paying us for rent, we know that the account is rent income. We don't have a column for that, so we put it in the sundry accounts and we put it in our analysis of receipts. We don't have another transaction for the 7th, so we can underline it in the analysis of receipts column and put it straight into our bank. Now that we have no more transactions in our cash receipts journal, we can total all the columns up to get your totals. You will get a mark for it. If you were posting to the general ledger, you would have to fill in your references in the folio column. Please note, I've left something out. It says the cash receipts journal of. I have not put the name or the month, but please don't forget to do that. Next, we will look at the cash payments journal. Hey, so the first transaction is on the 4th, and it says Mr. B's personal computer broke. So it's his personal computer. It has nothing to do with the business. He paid Compufix with a business check 74 of 500 Rand for repairs to this computer. So the first thing that we're going to go and fill in is we know the document number, the check number is 74. So we fill that in the document number, and we know the date is the 4th. Now, what I've put in the name of the payee is Compufix, because the check was made out to Compufix, even though Mr. B is using that check for personal use. What differs now is instead of putting the 500 Rand for repairs, which would be in the sundry accounts, we put the 500 Rand for drawings, because the money isn't being used for repairs for the business's computer, but for the owner's computer, and therefore he's taking funds out of the business for personal use, and it is drawings, and that can be put straight in the bank. Okay, when we're doing this, everything goes straight in the bank. We don't have an analysis of receipts column. Okay, the next transaction is issued check 75 to Design Center for 2,500 Rand to purchase office furniture. So once again, the first thing we go and put in is our check number and our date, which is the 10th, and it's 75. And the name of the payee is Design Center, because this is who the check is made out to. Now, we don't have a column for equipment, so this amount goes into my sundry accounts as 2,500 for equipment. Furniture would be classified as equipment unless your teacher tells you otherwise. Okay, next thing is we can see that on the 10th there is another item that we paid. So you don't have to go and put that 2,500 straight into the bank. You can if you want to, but you can just wait for all the amounts for one day to be done and put it in as one amount, which is what I'm going to do. So issue check 76 to printer.com for 600 Rand for stationery. Once again, I put the date as the 10th. I put the check number as 76. The payee is printer.com. That's who the check is out to. It is for 600 Rand, which goes into the sundry accounts, and the details straight stationery, as I don't have a column for stationery. Now that I'm completely done with all transactions or payments for the 10th, I can put the full amount of 3,100 into the bank column. So you can separate it or put it in as one, and your teacher should give you the marks for both. Okay, next we have paid the wages for the month by cash check. Wages amount to 500 Rand per week per worker, and the business employs 5 wage workers. So they might give you a little sum to work out. If we work out, right? So when we when we put this in, the document number is 77. The day is the 15th as it's been given. But please note the wording. We're not putting the name of the employees. We're saying a cash check. Now, whenever the business uses a cash check, the details in the name of the payee must be cash. So whenever we see cashed a cash check or paid by a cash check, the detail is cash. Okay. Now, if we work it out, 500 Rand per week per worker, and the business employs 5 wage workers. So we can say 500 times by 5 employees is 2,500 per week. And because there's 4 weeks within a month usually, we're going to say 2,500 times by 4, which gives us a total wage amount of 10,000 Rand. And that goes in our sundry accounts because we don't have a column for it. Lastly, our last transaction is on the 19th. The owner cashed a cash check for personal use, 600 Rand. So once again, it goes in, we need the document number of 78 and the date is the 19th. Now, even though that it is drawings, because he's taking this money for personal use, it said owner cashed a check. you would not put Mr. B's name. You would put cash, and the 600 Rand would go into bank and drawings. We can then total up your columns, and when you would take it to your general ledger, you would put your folio numbers. So that's basically how we work out cash payments journal and cash receipts journal. That's all for today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, direct message me, and I'd be happy to answer. Just things to remember: document numbers must always be in order. Cash checks, you must always have cash. Analysis receipts is only put into the bank at the end of the day. And that's about it. So let me know if you have any questions.